Hey everyone, so today we're going to be discussing some groundbreaking news that the October Digital SAT is actually going to be easier than not only the August SAT, but also one of the easiest SAT administrations of the year 2024, and this trend will be expected to continue into future years. Now, first off, let's just get a couple things out of the way. College Board has not officially released the exact scoring processes. Instead, they sort of hide behind the umbrella term of equating, right? They attribute this to just their scoring methodology and process. Now that can mean a lot of things, right? So if you want to learn more about this equating thing and get another perspective on this, I have linked a blog post below that gets into the technicals of equating. But first off, let's just get a couple of facts out of the way, right? So these are facts and 100% true, either straight from the College Board website or one of their manuals or documents. There are various test, quote unquote, forms with different strings of questions and combinations, right? So not everybody gets the same questions, obviously, because that makes it very easy to cheat on the SAT, and College Board doesn't want that, and so people will get different questions. You might get overlapping questions, but there are different forms for that. Number two is that the scoring for individual forms will be item weighted, right? So if you miss an easy question, you're going to be deducted more points than if you miss a quote unquote labeled hard question. Number three is that College Board will adjust raw scores to correlate to a specific scaled score. This is very important because that is going to lay the basis for our claims below. Now, everything beyond this point is not 100% fact, but it's just based on my own research and analysis in order to come up with a conclusion. I think you'll find this very interesting. So let's get right into it. So the so-called curves on the SAT are finalized after the first administration of that specific form, right? So it's not proven that they have curves, but there's very, very daunting evidence that points to post-score manipulation by College Board, right? And we'll get into that. We'll get into everything. However, for test forms that do not have a finalized quote-unquote curve, College Board will need to test it against a standardized population. And who's that standardized population going to be? That is going to be, of course, the October DSAT test takers, right? We have to think about this logically, right? If they give everybody the same test form, right? Test forms that have been used in the past, you're going to have way too many students get overlapping questions, get questions they remember, and therefore skew up what is supposed to be an integratable and standardized exam. Therefore, College Board will need to test new forms against this new standardized population in order to get a more accurate gauge on what is actually easy, medium, or hard. Therefore, these new forms have not been administered to a previous group of students, right? And so they don't actually know if it is actually this easy or this hard, right? They just have the assumption, right? But in the end, you can see here is that College Board admits that specific forms and exams are going to be easier and harder than they expect, right? But at the same time, they make this claim right here. They also claim that other students' performances do not affect your score. So there is going to be some contradictory fallacies here because the logic doesn't add up, right? So if other students' performances don't affect your score, then how can they gauge whether a exam or form is going to be easier or difficult, right? Because we know College Board, right here, in number 3, they adjust your raw score, They adjust your raw score to correlate with a specific scaled score, right? They literally scale your score based on whether the form is easier than expected or harder than expected, right? And so because it's a standardized exam, College Board has to maintain that standardized presence. Therefore, they're dependent on the curves to balance out the difficulty. Now, the digital SAT scores also still take 2 weeks to process and be released, right? Now, I know there's some integrity things and safety things that they go through, but the fact that the timeline for scores being released is the same as the paper SAT makes it really interesting because we can see from the Blue Book practice exams that the scores can be released pretty darn quick, right? And therefore, this makes you believe that there is something going on in the background for them to either curve scores or evaluate, are these forms actually accurate or easier or harder than expected? Therefore, we can go to the conclusion that there will be specific forms on the October digital SAT that are curved after the test, right? Based on other students' performances, they're going to curve each of those forms differently. Therefore, we have three big key ideas here that will make the October Digital SAT much easier to score high on. Number one is that seniors who have already scored high on the SAT tend not to retake in October, right? So what this does is that it eliminates a subset portion of test takers who could lower the curve, right? Because if you have seniors who scored high on the SAT, they're not scoring high on the October SAT if they decide not to retake, right? So let's say you were another senior that took the SAT and you got like a 1300. But this other senior who scored high, right, got like a 1500 on the same form as you, they're going to be increasing the barrier, right? Because College Board sees this and they're like, okay, well, the test actually wasn't that hard, right? Not everybody was, getting 1300s. We have students getting 1500s here, and therefore they're going to be lowering the curve because in their eyes, that test was actually a lot easier than they expected. Now, obviously, the numbers don't add up there, but the point is that if you have high achievers who score higher on the SAT, that makes College Board think that the test was easy, therefore we're going to give you a harsher curve, right, to balance it out. They want a bell curve in terms of score distributions. Number two is college applications and essays, right, the timing of it. You have a lot of people who are focused on their college applications and writing all those essays, that they're going to be less focused on preparing for the SAT. So if you're a current senior, listen up. And this also is a big advantage for you juniors and sophomores, because then the overall scores are going to be decreasing, right? Because people prepare less for the SAT during this month in administration, what that means is that there's an increased chance of test takers missing questions. And if you miss questions, that means a medium labeled question could be missed by so many people that in College Board's eyes, they're like, oh, this is actually going to be a hard question, right? So because of that, that gives you a better curve. Now, number three is that obviously as you take the SAT more and more, you're going to get the possibility of increased questions that are repeated from previous forms, and that gives you a obvious advantage, an edge. Therefore, take all this information, guys, make your own judgment and analysis. But from my eyes, the October digital SAT is going to be much easier than previous administration. So if you're on the edge about retaking it, I would highly encourage you to do so. And yeah, hope you guys learned something from this video. If you have any other questions, make sure you leave it in the comment section below. And thank you for watching.